Okay, well, today on the Bird Island Show, we have comedian Melissa Stevens, who has a show with former guest Daniel Van Kirk, Overshare Comedy, that is hosted monthly at the Bspoke, LA, which is really fun. This is a cool show. It's audience participation, especially the comics too, oversharing, embarrassing or cringeworthy moments. And it kind of makes this fun, organic experience for everybody. Traditionally, heckling or spouting out from audience members is not very well received, especially when you're new. But they are not new and they've been doing this forever. So thanks for your time. It's great to meet you. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
Yeah, this is really cool. Let's talk about the show that you host with Daniel. How did you guys come up with this idea? What was sort of the impetus for putting this together?
So, uh, basically, both he and I have wanted to have a monthly show again. I think that was something we were both, and we've known each other for a long time. We've both been kind of like on the radar of like where, what, when is that going to look like? And the idea of like overshare comedy was something that came to me in the sense of well, it's a through line through like just my comedy, and I felt like it something that wanting, and then kind of Daniel came up with the kind of the great idea to have the audience participate, but kind of that all comes down to like what's the brilliance of live comedy. And for me, I think something that would help me get me to a show, and what we're hoping with this is for people to experience something for the first time that no one else is experiencing. And also kind of like that secret moment. And that's the brilliance of live comedy, I think. And then I think that kind of dovetails into giving comics the opportunity to try new things, off the cuff stuff coming from the audience. Um, participation by writing down their kind of embarrassing overshare moments. And that's sort of like how that kind of came about, was to kind of create this moment that we're hoping to kind of continue, building upon is this, great experience of like what a live show is, what live comedy is.
Yeah, now Rory Scovel was just here in Fort Collins, I don't know, a couple of months ago, and he did an entire show that way from start, and he had a harp player too, which was just like the best part of
Amazing.
all of it. And to watch somebody who is seasoned and experienced like you guys, him, to take ideas from people and to craft that into a set is like phenomenal, especially somebody who is new like myself, 9, 10 months into stand up, that's still like fighting for that 3 minutes on stage, every Monday night, or the 5 to 7 if you get to host of constant rehearsed material. So when you all are doing this, like you're riffing between each other in addition to people contributing ideas. So that makes it easier, right? Would it be as easy maybe if it was just you up there trying to do that? I don't know. It's kind of an interesting experience no matter what, especially if an audience gets to, actually participate in live comedy versus just you going up and doing an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, every comedian's different. I think, and Rory is such a great example because he's so brilliant at it, and so is Daniel. Like, and I think it just, some people like different kinds of things, and I think Daniel and I, we also have, some history with improv, so we feel pretty comfortable whether together or solo, just kind of
Yeah.
going with the flow. And I think I love that. Like, I think that's the magic of live comedy sometimes. Now, that also means it can go horribly wrong, but you have to
Yes.
kind of like, you take it, take, you gotta just swing big. Is sort of how I feel. And move on if it doesn't work. Just kind of like let it go. And I think when I was newer, it was harder for me to move on when things didn't work.
Yeah, that's true because like when you're starting, and that could be for anybody, you're going for laughs. You want people to laugh.
Yeah.
Like whether it's a good joke or you're just doing something or saying something just so people laugh, because 2 minutes, 3 minutes is a very long time to be on stage, especially when you're watching a clock in the back and you don't want to run the
Oof.
light, um, or you can't see the clock. And then you're
Ugh.
just like, wow,
Ugh.
because it's a time. Have you ever played at the Comedy Fort? Let's just ask you,
No,
have
I
you?
haven't. I'd love to,
Okay,
but I haven't.
yeah, so there's a clock in the back and it's a monitor. It's very dimly lit. So if you
Oh.
don't know where it is, you can miss it. But my
Mm.
point being is like that's a long time. So if you're, doing what you're doing now, however many years in, and it's easier for you to be okay with not having something be okay. How far into your career or into this experience with Daniel were you before you, so a two-parter, like we're okay with just being okay with silence and maybe letting the uncomfortableness sit for a minute or two before you move on to your next joke or your next bit with Daniel?
So I think something that's it's a couple there's a couple of answers. So I think I really got comfortable with silence when I took my hour to Edinburgh Fringe.
Okay.
And no one laughed for an hour. Like I had one show where no one laughed.
The
And I had to do
entire
it.
hour, not
The
even
entire
an
nothing,
uncomfortable,
nothing,
oh,
nothing.
wow.
Nah, nada. And I was like, I just did it. And like, so now I'm like, I'm okay. If I get a laugh, I'm doing great. If I get one, like, I don't know, like something just like, like physically changed in me to where like I can find that moment in time for myself again and be like, just stand. This isn't going to kill you. It's fine.
Wow.
It's happened. It's going to continue to happen. It's just not going, that's part of this. And also there's like a two-parter to that. It also doesn't mean anything. Like
Right.
it means something, but it doesn't. It's kind of that thing of like sometimes, yeah, if you're trying out a new joke, it might mean it doesn't work or you need to whatever. But for me, like it had been a show I had done a lot. I knew it was funny. This wasn't working for these people. And
That
that
has to
doesn't
be
mean
one of
I'm
the
bad.
hardest things. Yeah, like where you've done something like you've done, people laugh. You've done
Mm,
it thousands and thousands of times. You've tweaked it, twisted it, made it your own, but then you take it to an audience and that's literally what you would call a bad night. Nothing you did, but the audience just was not into it at all, which
yeah.
I can't, it's like almost performing to an empty room.
Oh,
It's like,
honestly, it was, and my producers were there, and I, I had a photographer there, and
oh, well,
it
you
was
have
one
the
of those,
whole deal.
yeah, and I just remember being like, I cried after. I'm not like, made of metal. Like it wasn't. Would I don't want to replicate that. That's not something like I want to like continue to do, but it was something where I'm happy to have experienced it or I'm grateful to have experienced it because now when I'm on stage and people don't laugh, I just don't take it on in a way in which I used to, where I'd be like, get off stage. Like my negative voice wouldn't hold space enough for myself to be like, I'm figuring this out. It's fine if they don't laugh. Who cares? Let's move this. Like it's not the end of the world.
It's like an open mic from hell. It's like,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you still do open mics. It's probably been a while, but like, you just know that moment where like an audience gets used to what they like. You're up four, five, sixth, or you're at the end right before the person that's headlining, and they've already been trained in that moment of time to what they find funny. So if gets up and is one way and another person gets up in another way, it's just that's a fascinating science of comedy, which is why I've been interviewing comics for years because I find it so fascinating. Like this, like literally, I've watched it. You're funny. It's a funny special, but like then you take it to Edinburgh Fringe Festival and you're just like, okay. So how did
Yeah,
you
and you
feel
just
afterwards? Like you're done. What did your producers say? Were they like,
I mean, they knew like when I was on stage, they're like, this is not going well, and they tried to, I think, overcompensate, So I will say they tried to laugh to like help, but like I knew it was them fucking laughing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I'm like,
They're like in the back giggling
yeah, they're
out
like
loud.
trying to help me out, and I was like, and they were like, wow, I'm really, and I remember the photographer was like, I've seen a lot of comedians have this moment, and the fact that you kept and you performed it as if I was performing it for anyone. Like I didn't let it take away from, well, I just had to do it.
Yeah.
Does it change the fundamentally, like maybe how much joy I'm having in that moment, or like kind of the magic? Yeah, obviously, because you're supposed to have some laughs. Um, and I also kind of go like, well, that's what I get for planning, because was going in because it was also my last show, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna like say this and I go in there and I was like, that's what I fucking get. That's exactly what I get for thinking I know how this is gonna turn out. And you don't know, you never know. Like you don't know who's in the audience, you don't know what kind of day they had, you don't know, you just don't know, which is why you have to do things so many times to know. Like, I'm very grateful I had the opportunity to do that 30 times in 30 days to know, like, this wasn't about my material. Like,
Yeah.
I was in a foreign country. Who knows if they understood it? Like, there's so many things, and not to say this or that, but it was just like, I didn't have to take it on. And what I'm really grateful for was like, I didn't have to take it on like, oh, I'm bad. It
Yeah.
was just like, that sucks.
Yeah, that is part of it. So when you're doing this monthly show with Daniel, and you are interacting with the crowd, um, so let's say it's a night where they're just not into it. Do you just both continue to riff off each other and have a moment like maybe the Sklars or somebody else, these, duos, so to speak? I don't like that word. It sounds weird, but like you're partnering up there and you're just having fun. Is that what you revert to? Maybe go to some of your material where it's the greatest hits and you guys can riff off each other that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the show, Daniel's so good at this, and I'm good at it too. It's just like kind of knowing when to move on. When you're like, all right, well, we'll move on to something else. And like also just the thing is you'll find them. You can kind of like we'll figure out where they're, you know what I mean? Like you just kind of have to like keep going and like
Yeah.
not take it on, and sometimes that might mean going into something that is going to work to kind of get them back into the pocket or whatever that is, and kind of just knowing that you can trust who you're on stage with, and just also just trust, the audience wants to laugh. They're not
Ooh,
trying
that's
not to laugh,
gold right there. Yeah. They don't
so
show up to a club, buy two drinks,
no.
pay $15, expecting to not have a laugh.
Yeah, so for me, my goal is to not take it out on them, because this isn't about them. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just like we're doing this together. It's okay. Like because I also know what it's like to be in an audience. So yeah, I think trust. Like you just have to trust, and you can kind of, what's kind of fun about our show is like we can always pull another overshare, from the audience that they've given, and they're usually gold. There's always something
Oh, yeah.
there, so we're never without.
That brings me to an interesting question I want to talk to you about. I always ask comics this question about crowd work. It sort of divides the room a little bit. You have a certain sect of people over here that say crowd work is no good. It's because you don't have good material. I'm not saying that, but that's the vibe. Then you have the other side over here, or the middle maybe, where that's all they do. Like they see you on TikTok, they pay $50 and they come in, and for an hour and a half, it's just crowd work. And then you have the other half over here that just does it when it's appropriate. Like for you, where do you land in that sect? With your improv background, I would imagine that's helpful to you because you have that to fall back on, and you don't, there's always the yes and moments, right? It's not just yes and then no and then shutting down
Yeah, I
again.
mean, I totally get this. And it is kind of, I think because of social media, it's become
People
a,
expect to be in the show.
yeah, it's a much bigger thing because, well, it's easier to showing. I mean, I watch them. I love watching crowd work clips. I think it's really fun.
Yeah.
It's just like I can get into that. It's fun. You're watching it happen in the moment. Like we're moving on. It's also, I think, because you don't want to post your material before you've done a special or it's ready, and so it is much easier to post those other things. For me, like, I remember getting a review when I was in Edinburgh that was, um, like I had some crowd work moments that went really well. But it's not something that I'm probably in the middle ground. Like I see both sides. Like I do it if it just naturally comes up, but I don't aim to do it, if that makes sense.
Hey, where are you from? Fuck you. You're not, let's not those,
Yeah, oh yeah, that's not my vibe. I thought you were just doing this to me. I was like, oh, I'll tell you. Actually, like, no, but
No,
like
just
some
kidding.
comics, they start with that. That
Oh, I
is
know. I've seen
their,
it. I just find it all
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah,
There's people like Nate Jackson who has become so well known for that. Gianmarcos Racy is another
yeah.
former, that's kind of like he had some really fun things to say about that the whole crowd work vibe. I didn't know you're funny. No, I wasn't saying that to you. I
Oh no, no,
get
it's fine. I took it in the moment. But yeah, it's interesting. I'd love to hear because I know everyone's kind of got something to say about it. Yeah, I'm kind of like, listen, just do what your strengths are,
right. No, I get it. It's
and
just
if you
interesting.
want, yeah. I think for me, um, yeah, no, yeah, it just kind of depends. Depends on the show, depends on the venue, depends on all kinds of things depend on it. I definitely, yeah, I don't start there, but that doesn't mean I don't do it. Is that kind of vibe?
Do audiences, when they come to this show that you do with Daniel, do they know that they're going to have the opportunity to participate? Do you have them write things down prior to okay. So you have a
Yeah, so they
starting point.
know. Yeah, we have
Okay.
a starting point. They know, and because we know going in, I don't know, like I guess having a show where they are participating and we are having that moment, it feels well, I'm not thinking about whether or not I'm going to have a crowd work because I know I'm doing it. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like it's part of it, and then I move on when I feel like moving on. So it's like we're gonna,
Gotcha.
and I don't know, that part feels like the best way to describe it is just kind of feels like, which is something I wanted, and I think Daniel could say this too, something I wanted to feel with this show, which is like to kind of feel like we're all in this together. We're all having this moment together, which is why I think people love crowd work moment. They're a part of it. But some people don't want to be, don't want to be talked to and all of those things, which
That's
I
why you
also
don't
think is
sit in the
fine.
front row.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, don't sit around.
First two rows are always like the
Yeah.
splash zone. I don't even care who you are. Like you will get called upon.
Yeah.
There are very good chances, especially if you're in a small venue and the room is not that big and everybody's
Yeah.
kind of crunched in together. Like the chances of you getting called upon, and especially in a club where you're ordering drinks and food and it's all from a QR code on your table, so you have to be on your phone. That's like an automatic magnet. So you, in your own right, have lots of writing credits. You've done other things too. Which came first, that or comedy, or were they both an equal byproduct of each other?
I think equal sort of coming at the same time. I never really set out to be a writer, but you can't do well, I'm not going to say you can't do comedy without being a writer, but that's been my journey. That the more comedy I did, the more I wrote, and the more I wrote, the more it led down a specific path. Like I didn't start in stand up, I started in improv, at Groundlings, and then
Nice.
when I went through to the Sunday Company and then realized like, oh, I don't want to, this isn't the route, and I was doing stand up, but they had sort of taught me how to write sketch. So it was like, and it was just at the time when like, I don't know, it kind of felt like a comedy fishbowl, like there was used to be, and then there was like, there's the comedy clubs, and then we're just all kind of, we're all just like making and doing things, and it's just all kind of becoming that. And then stand up, and the more stand up I did, the more I like was finding my POV and the more I was writing. So it kind of like, and the more I felt confident to say I was a writer actually.
That's
So,
interesting. So, okay, I like that. Like you didn't call yourself like you could go into LA and run into anybody on a street corner and this isn't a dig, but they would say, "Oh yeah, I'm a writer." "Oh, like what have you worked on?" "Oh, nothing. I haven't written anything," you know.
hmm.
But you have actual credits, you know, and you've worked with people who are known in the industry, so that all adds to your persona of who you are. Interesting. This is so cool. I love this is also fascinating. This show that you guys do is just really cool. Um, I wanted to ask, so do you have you ever had moments in this overshare show where you've gotten things and it's been like, I don't even know what to say to that, or is it all pretty like there's nothing that's just completely thrown you off from an audience member?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay.
But you never know. But that's also, but see, like I also weirdly like I love seeing that honest reaction for something. Like I'm okay. Like that doesn't freak me out. Like that to me is like that's fun. I don't know why. It's like a roller coaster. It's like, let's see what this says, and then you get to have this moment. Because I had this at the end of my last show that I took to Edinburgh. I would read people's like childhood like embarrassments. And I it was my favorite part of the show. Like I was like, I can't wait. And there were some things where I'd be like, ooh, wow. And also like sometimes people say things and you've got to make something that's really dark.
Funny.
Yeah. And so you gotta, and there's always a way. There's always a way. You can make it work. It's just tough.
Yeah, that's one of the other fascinating things I find about comedy is like, you know, there's everybody's different, as you said at the beginning of our conversation, like their point of view, their persona, their voice is different. But being able, if that's your thing, you know, to take something very dark, somebody might share something, but you can like flip it and make everybody laugh and feel extremely comfortable and go, okay, it's it's okay to laugh at this, whatever it
Yes.
might be. Um, Very cool stuff. So now that you've got the show, are you touring right now? Are you gearing down for holidays? What are you up to?
I'm not touring right now. I am working on my next hour, which I want to. So I'm like doing spots in LA as much as I can, while I'm also trying to like get some writing like scripts done at the same. So I'm trying to do like a little bit of both. But next year I would like to get into touring, and I want to do my hour next year and find and figure out where, when, and how with that, and filming that as well. I don't know the answers to the where it will be.
That's okay. Well, if you're ever in Colorado, please ring.
Oh,
I
I
always like
will.
to support and come hang out. Being a good hang is always fun. That's 95% of doing stand up, I think, is just getting to connect with
Yeah.
people, which I think is so cool. Which they don't teach that in a comedy class, I don't think. If anybody out there listening, and again, not a dig, there are classes out there.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. What? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't
no,
mean
no,
to.
you're fine. You're good.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's interesting because I know I've never taken like a stand-up class. I just kind of kept doing it.
Yeah.
But they don't teach you that, and it's so interesting because I recently said this to Daniel that like, and I actually said it to my other friend Jen, who's a comedian, where I was just like, comedians kind of feels like we're our own housewives, like housewives of whatever, because for me, I'm incredibly sensitive. I'm neurotic. I take everything personally. I think things are about me that aren't about me or whatever it is. And also learning how to be a person and hang with people and different, you know, is part of being a comedian. And it also is, can be challenging. And no one really, yeah, you're not going to learn that in a class.
No, because when you start out, you're not just walking up to tables and chatting with people. I'm trying to think of his name. Uh,
I know who you're talking about. Morgan J.
yeah, or you, Morgan J. or Keith Robinson. Like he told a story about, you know, he was promoting his special Different Strokes, And he's like, you have to learn how to behave in a green room. You have to learn that if you see a table of comedians talking, you don't just like walk up and go, hey. Or he told a story of somebody like dipping a hot wing into his ranch and was just like, what are you doing? It's all a thing. Like
Yeah.
95% of it is that. The other 5% is all very complicated years, hours of torture, self-deprecation, going, why am I doing this? But
Hmm.
it's just enough delusion to get you through to the next spot. It's obviously paid off well for you, which you're very talented and funny. So I think it's cool. I would love to see the show someday if I'm ever in LA. Um, it's fun. It's gonna be
I would love to have you. It will be so fun. So if you're ever
you're.
in LA, please tell
I
us.
will. Yeah, I have been trying to get out there. So you have another show next month? Do you have one that you're doing in December at the
Yeah, December
Bespoke?
4th.
Okay.
December 4th, the first Wednesday of every month, except for we're not doing January because the first Wednesday is New Year's Day.
Yeah, I probably won't get a lot of people out. We might,
Yeah,
but
you
it's
never know.
tough. I don't
It's
know.
tough
With the
as
fight the other night, a lot of people suffered too, I heard. A lot of
really.
clubs, yeah, because people were watching
Oh,
the
yeah,
Jake
I
Paul, Mike
bet.
Tyson fight. My friend was in
Yeah.
California doing shows, and he said that night was their audience was really low because people were watching the fight in the bar next door. So,
Oh, yeah. And see, the thing is like, I don't know if it's happened since COVID, but it is. Yeah, it's just if it's like two things can't be happening at the same time. It's like
yeah, I
there's
know
like
it's
one.
weird. It's like,
It's a weird world of live comedy and getting people to come to shows and liking experience, because once you're there, I mean, everyone who comes to the show is like, God, I can't wait to come again. I can't wait to tell
yeah,
people,
that's like the
you know.
thing. That's so cool. And I'm sure, do you get repeat visitors that you see in the audience that,
Yeah, and they love it. And it's great because it's not a comedy club. It's a different kind of space, but it's very central and it's good for comedians because like they can, pop over to different comedy clubs because it's like right in the center of LA. So you can kind of do multiple spots in that
that's
night, which I
cool.
think is helpful. Um, and it's on a Wednesday, so that's also helpful. It's like probably not when people are like gigging or touring and all of those things. So, it's just getting people in seats is, I think, everyone's struggle bus these days.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing like experiencing live comedy. I think it's just different than it's a very creative, crafty art form, but different than like a musical or a play or, it's just so different. I like that what you said though as we wrap here. People come expecting to laugh, not coming to expect to not laugh, which I think is
Yeah,
that's
it's
gold.
good. Yeah, it's cool. It's kind of like, giving, and I tell people that like if you're pitching something or you're auditioning for something, is like people don't want you to fail. Like people the audience doesn't want you to not be funny. You know what I mean? Why would they want that? It's like the antithesis of why they're there. And to me, that creates like kind of an umbilical cord with them of like, we're in this together. You can trust me and I can trust you. And that kind of comes back to what you were talking about in the beginning of like, how do you know to like get through a moment that doesn't work and just stand there? It's like kind of having that because you can tell, and I'm sure I've done this when a comedian is unsure on stage. But when a comedian's not funny or a joke doesn't work and they're confident, I don't care.
They can work out of it
Yeah, you get
very
out of it.
easily. You just
Yes.
go, okay, well, I guess people here are this or that, or,
Yeah. You move on and you make
you
a
don't.
comment and you like boop, boop, boop. But if it rattles you, which I've been there, I think everyone's been there, then the audience goes, oh, they get nervous. And if they're nervous, like that's when they start to like that kind of trust is broken a little bit.
Very well said. Thank you so much, Melissa. You're the best. Everybody, if you're watching and listening and are in the
Mhm.
LA area, come check these guys out. Of course, Daniel Van Kirk, former guest, and now, of course, Melissa Stevens as well with their Overshare Comedy at the Bespoke in LA. Thank you for your time. This has been awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.